and particularly also on our work at SolarPower Europe, which Subramanian was mentioning just before. To give you a little bit of context, the European Union has set itself a climate neutrality objective by 2050. And this will require a very deep transformation of Europe's society and economy, and particularly of its energy and agri-food sectors. Right now, we have a 32% renewable energy target for 2030, which is going to be increased very likely to at least 40%. In parallel, we also have a new common agricultural policy, which is mainstreaming climate ambitions across European agricultural policies. And Agrisolar is an innovation which can simultaneously deliver on all these challenges. It's an opportunity to realize the European Green Deal for the European Union and other places to meet their decarbonization targets and mainstream a sustainable agricultural sector. Within SolarPower Europe, I am very proud to work with an amazing set of companies who have a lot of experience both in the development of solar projects, but also in the research, including Fraunhofer, ISE, and Max, who is a regular contributor to our work. So maybe to keep on with the context, I wanted to say a few words about what is happening in Europe. Agrisolar is a sector which is expanding very rapidly. However, it's happening in a sort of a patchy fashion. You have certain parts of the European Union which are very advanced, and this is particularly the case of France, which has supported agri-solar projects through renewable energy tenders for a few years now, and has had a quite short, but still a definition for agri-solar since 2017. In parallel to this, you in Germany, you also have a lot of movement. Notably, the German government has started to provide support for agri-solar projects through innovation tenders. And you've had the first technical standard for agri-photovoltaic systems, which was published only earlier this year. In Italy, a really interesting example is how they are planning to direct a very large amount of funds, or more than 3 billion euros, towards the agri-solar sector as part of their recovery plan for COVID. In addition to this, and this is one of the most interesting initiatives I've seen, is the launch of an Italian sustainable agrivoltaics network between the solar sector and the agricultural syndicates to jointly think and push for only the most sustainable types of agrivoltaic systems. And this potential is huge, because I mean, like in India, if solar were deployed on only 1% of Europe's arable land, the technical capacity would be more than 900 gigawatts, which is 6 times more than the current installed capacity in the EU. However, as I said, the developments are quite patchy, and there's going to be no coherent definition at European level, and there are no very clear regulatory frameworks in all of these places. It's for this reason that with the Agrisolar workstream, we decided to develop the first Agrisolar best practice guidelines to bring a little bit more detail to the Agrisolar project and the way we develop projects. Because the principle behind Agrisolar is quite straightforward. You combine a sustainable agricultural practice or project with a photovoltaic installation. However, this dual approach is really, can generate a lot of very positive synergies, notably in terms of increased crop yields or reduce water use, but also comes with a higher degree of complexity, which requires an important degree of foresight to ensure the project quality is maintained and that the project can operate both as an agricultural project and a PV project. So as Chairman Mehta said, there is already a lot of available experience on what crops to grow, but there's also a lot of experience on how to design the PV system, how to optimize it, and how to ensure that it is done in a good way. But it's also important to keep in mind that even though we know a lot of things, there are a lot of things that we don't know yet. And so for SolarPower Europe, it will be very important to continuously update these guidelines as we learn and move forward. So what do we mean by agri-solar? For us, agri-solar is very much the umbrella term for the combination of a solar project and a sustainable agricultural practice. The key element here is that the solar is providing a service that is of agricultural nature, but also that the agriculture comes to complement the solar project. And as a basis, what we see is the need to start the project with a sustainable agricultural concept, which requires an analysis of the benefits to the farmers and rural communities from the project and of the environmental impacts, including things such as the impacts on soil quality, on biodiversity, and on the water management. And once you start with this, you unlock a lot of very disruptive applications which capitalize on this dual approach. And notably, you can think about the deployment of solar barn on roofs, which provides a very useful infrastructure for agriculture, but also using on-site solar PV to refrigerate agricultural buildings. Now, one subset of agri-solar for us is agricultural photovoltaics, or Agri PV. And these are systems in which there is a co-location between the PV system and the sustainable agricultural activity, which requires what we call photon management, which means the optimization of the amount of light which reaches the crops or the agricultural activity and the PV panels, which allows, as you can see on the screen, systems such as this, where you effectively grow raspberries in this case, and have an effective PV installation. Now, the key thing here is that the design of the PV system has to be specifically adapted to the agricultural activity and to the crop needs quite specifically. And this is where a lot of the knowledge and the research is going to identify what combinations are possible. So in the Agrisolar best practice guidelines, we identified 4 overall types of applications: the elevated Agri PV of the raspberry farm I just showed you, but also Agri PV greenhouses, and a very traditional one actually, which is open field Agri PV, in which you can have agricultural practices on the same site as a ground mounted system. And the final one are the agricultural buildings, on which I will go a little bit later. And just to make it clearer for everyone, these are the types of systems that we understand as Agri PV. The report also identified a number of very interesting trends and innovations within the Agri PV sector. One of them is the reintroduction of agricultural practices in existing ground-mounted solar plants. This is a project led by Enel Green Power, and which we're really interested to see the results of in the coming years. You also have what is known as dynamic Agri PV, which allows the dynamic orientation of the PV panels to optimize either the PV production or the crop growth, depending on the light needs or the shade needs of the crop in question. And then you also have a lot of work being done on a new generation of semi-transparent or even dynamically semi-transparent modules, as the one you can see on your screen, which is a technology which can change the transparency depending again on the needs of the crop in question. So maybe to go a little bit into more detail on the type of projects that we're seeing, I really find this raspberry farm project developed by BEVA RE in the Netherlands a really great example of the things that we're doing in Europe. So this system was installed over 3.3 hectares and with a capacity of over 2 megawatts, and used semi-transparent or transparent backsheets for the panels to optimize the light transmission for the raspberries. The panel efficiency was improved, but also it allowed the farmer to use less pesticides and due to an more optimal rain protection. And crucially, this project increased the crop yields for the farmer. Another very good example of what we can do with Agrisolar are these Agrisolar barns developed by Amarenco in Corsica, in which you had a situation in which you had a lot of farmers who had a very low income and who were unable to invest in storage space for the fodder that they needed for their cattle and sheep. The result was that they had to ship this fodder back to mainland France because Corsica is an island, which increased cost and had a sizable environmental impact. Now, because Corsica was promoting solar PV through a feed-in tariff, Amarenco designed a barn which was financed through the feed-in tariff and which allowed the farmers to store their fodder and their agricultural produce locally, which empowered them, increased the food and energy independence of Corsica, and significantly reduced the environmental impacts of agricultural activities in the island. So to finish, I think one of the key elements from our Agrisolar project was this idea that any Agrisolar project requires a significant additional degree of foresight to maximize the project quality. And this is where the sustainable agriculture concept comes in, which for us is a key step in the planning, but also that impacts the lifetime operation of the project. The sustainable agricultural concept relies on two steps. First, the definition of the criteria to ensure the project is effective as an agricultural project, but also as a PV generation equipment, and also a plan to ensure the project maximizes ecological synergies, such as reducing water use, but also agronomical synergies, such as, for example, improving crop yields. Now, for us, the sustainable agricultural concept is divided across 4 dimensions: the agriculture, the environment, the socioeconomic impacts of the project, and the life cycle performance assessment, which we then subdivided into 3 levels of importance. A must category, which is common to all Agrisolar projects for it to be considered Agrisolar, and then should and could requirements, which allow project developers to go increasingly forward in the sustainability of their projects. And the result of this framework is the table you see on your left, which gives us already a basis to begin developing an indicative framework to assess the quality of an Agrisolar project, depending on whether or not they respect, most importantly, the must criteria that any Agrisolar project has to respect, but also the increasing steps in the quality performance, which we allows us to then provide the benchmark you see on your left in order to promote only the most sustainable Agrisolar projects in the European Union. And maybe to end, for us, this is one of the key elements of any Agrisolar framework, in addition to the very, very good points raised by Subramanian before me, is that in addition to the support, in addition to the clear regulatory framework, you need a quality assessment framework to ensure that no projects which do not respect basic elements of an agricultural project, or which really don't operate effectively as a PV system, are not supported. While the projects which are developed correctly, the projects in which you really can see a link between the agriculture and the PV generation, can benefit from the, as speakers said before me, very needed support schemes. So that is it from my side. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to the rest of the conference.